Ideally, Christians can just read the Bible, learn God's truth, and then apply those truths directly to their relationships, and all is well. Unfortunately, life isn't always that clean, and a lot of times we have to learn lessons the hard way. So, in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 different relationship lessons that I've learned the hard way. A lot of time, again, that scenario where I explained in the beginning happens to me. God will show me something in the scriptures. I'll know something intellectually. Maybe I'll read a great Christian marriage book or a relationship book, and you learn something new. But until you fail a few times, you experience real life, that lesson doesn't really get into you. So after 10 years of marriage, I've had plenty of trial and error moments. And these 5 lessons are some of the most common things I see with other people, and just some of the biggest lessons that I've learned. So the first thing that I've learned the hard way is that when my wife tells me a problem in her life, she's not always asking me to solve it. So, one of the biggest changes when Bethany and I went from dating and engaged to actually marriage is that when we started living together in marriage, we just experienced all of life together. So she would come home from work, I would come home from work or school, and we would just share everything, all the little ups and downs. And so, for example, she'd be telling me about her work day, something that happened with her boss, or maybe she had some sort of odd interaction at small group that she was leading, maybe something with her family. And when you're husband and wife, you just like up all the information that a boyfriend and girlfriend share. So all that to say, I'm hearing all of these stories, and I'm getting all of this information. We're together all the time now. And I just figured, hey, you know what? She's probably telling me this because she wants me to help her solve a problem. But what would happen is she would tell me something that's going on in her life. I would be very analytical and try to like give her tips or like tell her what she should do. She would end up getting frustrated. I would end up getting frustrated and offended, like, hey, what the heck? I'm just trying to help. And then, the long story short, we end up in a fight and blah, blah, blah. Just a big problem. So eventually, I can't remember exactly when this was. It was pretty early on in our marriage. But I remember Bethany finally just told me, like, I don't need you to solve this. Like, I don't need you to tell me what I'm doing wrong or what I can do better. I just was telling you this because I wanted to share it with you. And that was just like odd because as a man, I don't want to speak for all men, but I think a lot of men, we just don't do that as much. We don't just like share like parts of our day just for no purpose, or in my mind no purpose. See, I'm even doing it now. Like, the purpose that she was trying to say was like, I want to connect with you and share something, and my mind is like, what's the problem that we need to solve? And so, long story short, once that finally clicked for me and I stopped instantly trying to solve the problems that she was talking about, things got a lot better. I had to understand that she wasn't telling me this because she didn't know what to do. Like, she's a smart person, she's a mature Christian. Normally, the issues or problems or things in her life, she wasn't like confused on what she's supposed to do next. She knew what she should do. So she was just sharing these things with me because she wanted me to listen, and she wanted to feel like I actually understood her and that I understood her feelings. So that's all she was wanting from me. She wasn't coming to me for this grand solution. Rather, she was coming to me because I'm her husband, and she just wanted me to be there for her. And when that clicked, things got a lot better. The second relationship lesson that I had to learn the hard way is that you don't always need to talk about relationship problems as soon as they happen. So, if you're someone who's just gotten engaged, or maybe you've been around engaged couples, you probably like are experiencing what I think most people experience, is that all the married people feel obligated to give you some sort of relationship advice. Sometimes even at like a party or at the wedding, they invite all the married people up to like share some words of wisdom, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the most common pieces of advice that I like always heard, and that at every wedding you always hear people say this, is that never go to bed angry. Never go to bed angry. Always figure it out before you go to bed. Never be angry at your spouse when you go to sleep. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm not saying it's always a bad idea. In fact, I even believe it's a very biblical piece of advice in general when it's not over applied. For example, in Ephesians 4 verse 26, it states, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." So right there it says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. However, I do think that I was over applying this verse, and I think many other couples do the same thing. So my experience was that as soon as a problem occurred, or some sort of offense happened, a misunderstanding, some sort of relationship issue that just happens with any relationship, whether it's super healthy or unhealthy, like all marriages just have little things every now and then, just little problems here and there that you just miscommunicate. And my tendency was to instantly try to solve it. Like, oh, there's a problem. We got to talk about this right now and figure this out right now. We cannot let this go. We are not leaving each other until every last little problem has been solved. And what I learned through trial and error is that this was not always the best approach. In general, if you can solve it like that and just instantly tackle it, then yeah, that's the best route. But what I found was that when the emotions are so high and things are so fresh, and someone just said something that hurts your feelings, or you just said something that hurts, your spouse's feelings, the reality is your emotions are so high, it's very hard to have a controlled, logical, rational conversation to solve a problem, and it ends up being a very emotion driven, and it's just really hard to actually get to the root of the problem. And so what Bethany and I have learned is that sometimes it's better to actually not like dive into some problem that you're having, or some disagreement, or she wants to do this, I want to do that, we have some sort of different view. Like, it's not always the best thing to instantly try to figure it out. So, for example, it's an over application that, something happens at 10 p.m. at night. You normally go to bed at 11 p.m. You better stay up till 3 a.m. and talk ad nauseum until you figure it out. And then you'll be tired the rest of the week and probably get into more marriage fights because you're tired. That's an over application of that verse. What that verse is saying don't hold on to bitterness, don't be unforgiving, solve problems as quickly as you can. It's not literally saying, hey, you're sinning if you don't solve a problem when the literal sun in space, goes down and it's nighttime. That's not what the verse is saying. So what I learned the hard way is that, again, sometimes it's better to not instantly jump into a problem. Now, the key is you actually have to come back to it. You're misapplying what I'm saying if you think I'm saying just let it go and ignore an issue that needs to be talked about. That's like the anti of what the verse is saying in Ephesians 4:26. But you don't have to do it like instantly, because again, it's just sometimes too hard to do. Number 3 really ties into point 2 that I just made. And what I learned the hard way in relationships is that it's not always about what you say, it's about how you say it. It's just as important of how you communicate what you're saying as what you're saying. Like, it's like, I don't know, 50-50 if I had to put a percentage on it. So that's one of the reasons it's so helpful sometimes to give a little bit of space between you and the person that there's a conflict with, because again, if you're really emotional and you haven't had a time to process it and it's just all really fresh, the words you say, even if they're like the right words, they're not going to be said in the best way possible, probably, if you're really emotional about it. We all know that communication is far more than words. God made humans to communicate in amazing ways. The rising of an eyebrow, body language, inflection in our voice, the tone that we're using, the volume that we're using, the way that you're standing. So many different things go into communicating a message that you're trying to communicate to somebody. So Christians aren't just called to speak the truth. In Ephesians 4:15, the Bible says that we're supposed to speak the truth in love. That's a lesson that I had to learn the hard way, because usually I knew what needed to happen relationally. I knew what was going on. I know the problem, but I was just too emotional to say it the way that it needed to be said. If I needed to apologize, or maybe I needed to express why my feelings got hurt, and I just can't. Though even if I said what was accurate and true, if I didn't say it correctly, the problem wasn't actually solved. Because again, if you say things the wrong way, the meaning behind those words isn't always what you say. If you say, "Oh, I'm sorry," that's totally different than saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry that I did that. I can see that I made a big mistake." The way you say that is totally different. Even though you said it the same words, the meaning is obviously very different. The fourth lesson that I had to learn the hard way in my relationship with Bethany is that I'm not always the center of my wife's emotions. So what would happen is Bethany would be having just like a normal bad day that like all humans have. When you live together with your spouse, you're going to see all the range of human emotions that every single person has. Some days we have good days, some days we have bad days, some days we're tired, some days we're energetic. That's just the human experience. And a mistake that I was making was to assume that all of my wife's emotions were directly linked to my behavior. So anytime she would be a little bit quieter that day, or maybe she just was a little bit frustrated or a little bit more touchy than normal, my mind would instantly go, why is she mad at me? Like, what did I do? And the reality is, many times I didn't do anything, and I really wasn't a part of why she was feeling that way. And so I would ask her like, "Hey, what's wrong? Like, did I do something?" And she would say, "No, I'm just tired," or "No, I just had a bad day at work." And the mistake I was making was, "Yeah, right, I did something. What did I do? Like, tell me what I did. Why don't you want to talk about it?" And I would either just like hold that internally and then cause my own tension with her, or like genuinely not let it go and keep talking about it. And so what I had to learn was, I am not always the center of my wife's emotions. She can have emotions that have nothing to do with me. She has a life that I'm not always the center of everything. Like, obviously your spouse has a big role to play in your life, but I had to take a step back and realize, hey, maybe what she said is true. She had a bad day at work. Let her have a bad day. It's okay if she wants to be quieter. I don't have to always take it personal when she's acting a little bit different, and vice versa. She didn't struggle with that as much as me, but the same lessons apply to her. If I have a bad day, she's not like always the problem that I'm acting a different way in our house. The fifth one that I'll share in this video is that food, sleep, and just general physical wellness play a huge part in the mood of our household. Like, the physical stuff and just the practical stuff is way undervalued most times in relationships. So over the years, this took a while, honestly, probably in the last few years of mine and Bethany's marriage. Again, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, but I would say within the last few years, this is an area where we've become a lot more aware and just valuing the simple physical needs of our body a lot more. And it's definitely improved different areas, and just realizing like sometimes it's not spiritual warfare. Sometimes you're tired and you're hungry and you had a long day and you're introverted and you just need like some time to recoup. Sometimes it is spiritual warfare. Sometimes it is a sin issue. Sometimes there is a relationship problem. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's these other things. And so we've started valuing those things more and putting a higher priority on those things. And, this isn't a parenting video, but we've learned that about our kids too. Like, a lot of times they're having a moment or a freak out or a tantrum, and we got to ask ourselves, when was the last time we fed them? Did they get enough sleep? And a lot of times that's the problem. I don't need to go discipline them and have a big parenting conversation with my kids if I haven't given them enough food and they're just acting crazy because their body doesn't have what they need and they feel agitated and they don't even know why. So long story short, don't underestimate the importance of physical health, food, sleep, exercise. Just like, if you're not feeling well physically, that's going to affect the way you interact with other people and just how you live your life. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We're making multiple videos like this every single week. So if you don't want to miss the new content that we're putting out, you got to make sure you hit that subscribe button and maybe even like this video and share it. Those are great ways that you can support the AGW channel if you've found this content helpful to you. Well, again, I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and God bless.